How contradictory am I, you ask? Well, let's find out. Hi guys, welcome back, bienvenue, and all that jazz. It's time to talk about some books. Or today we're doing a fun little book tag that I was tagged by Ingrid over at Ingrid Inspired. I'll link her deets down below. And it's just a fun little 8-question book tag where we show a little bit of our contradictory opinions about covers, authors, etc., etc., etc. So let's just jump in, shall we? Question number 1. I love this genre, but I didn't love this book. So if you have been on this channel for any amount of time, you know here we stand, the fantastic Laurel K. Hamilton. So I have a particularly soft spot for paranormal urban fantasy. So all the vampires, werewolves, shapeshifters, all of it. Love all of it. So since starting BookTube, had been hearing a lot of different people rumbling about the Dresden Files by Mr. Jim Butcher. And I don't hate the books by any means. I've read the first 3 out of who knows how many there are. But I did not love them as much as I was hoping. And I think a lot of that comes down to the main character, Harry Dresden. He's a lot of it sexist, and his weird pervy school friend, Bob, or whatever its name is, who just wants to constantly be out, like, looking into girls' locker rooms. Like, I just don't find that super funny or entertaining or whatever. Just, like, all the, like, heteronormative stereotypes of, like, no. And so I think that has really detracted from my, like, just falling in love with this series, because I do like the wizard aspects. The, like, plot aspects are mostly fun. It's just I don't really connect with Harry Dresden, and I do hear that he, like, evolves and changes throughout the series, and that he becomes less sexist over time. So I do plan to continue with the series with book 4 eventually. I'm currently taking a break from it. I had book 4 on loan from the library a few months ago, and I returned her. I returned her without opening her, which I know is very rude, but like, I just have not fallen in love with that series, and I hope to someday. Next question. I rarely read this genre, but I loved this book. So, a genre that I read very little from would be nonfiction. And I think that's largely because I'm still in school. So I'm in my 4th out of 5 years towards my PhD in biochemistry. So day in and day out for work, I read a lot of, like, dense scientific literature, or I'm reading different stuff. I work particularly looking at proteins involved in the disease tuberculosis. And so I just spend a lot of my time and my energy and my effort reading real world stuff. So usually when I'm reading for fun, as like a sense of escape, or to find whimsy or wonder, or just fun in my life. And so nonfiction usually doesn't tackle, like, fun stuff. You know what I mean? It's meant to be informative. Sometimes it's people's life stories, and they're not always the happiest. But one nonfiction that I read, and I read this when I was in junior high, and it sticks with me to this day. So that would be Into Thin Air by Jon Krakauer. This book, very short, very quick read. However, be ready for... It made me cry when I was in junior high. This is the story of, I think it was in the late 90s. There was a group of climbers on Mount Everest that got stranded up there in this, like, super strong blizzard, and many of them died. And so this is a story of what happened to them. And so since we know many of them died, like, it is not a fun read. It is informative. It is moving. I really like Jon Krakauer's writing style, and I know that he has other books that I keep meaning to check out, and I just haven't gotten to them yet. But this is a fantastic nonfiction book. So if you want to be depressed and read about people trying to survive in this scary blizzard on Mount Everest, you're welcome. Then question 3 is, I love this trope, but I didn't like this book. So I love me a good prophecy. I love seeing how people misinterpret the actual language of the prophecies, how that, like, misleads them sometimes. I love all of those different aspects that come along with a good prophecy trope. However, I have not necessarily loved the way that prophecies are done, or some of them are done, in The Wheel of Time. So this is just the prequel novella because it was the easiest one to grab off the shelf. Don't judge me! But some of the prophecies in here about the dragon being reborn and all of that prophecy, I like. But there are also these kind of weird, like, romantic prophecies where, like, you're gonna end up with the daughter of the 9 moons or whatever, and, like, what does that mean? Who is that? What? Huh? And, like, when it starts coming to fruition in later books, because I've read up through book 11 in this series, and I have read the prequel novella as well, so I'm 12 books into this 15 or 14 book, depending on how you're counting it, series, if you exclude the prequel novella. And just those romantic prophecies, I'm just not here for. Just, like, I don't love it. It's not that I dislike, like, the entire Wheel of Time. The first 4 or 5 books, I actually was, like, so here for, especially book 1. I loved it so much. And then the slog really kicked my ass. I'm not gonna lie. There's no way to sugarcoat that. The slog was awful for me, and it really, like, put a damper on how I was feeling about this series, to the point where I haven't picked up a new Wheel of Time book in 3, 4, 5 months, something like that now. And I only have 3 books left, and I know that they're, like, the ones where it starts to get really good, and it's Brandon Sanderson, because I'm at the point, I read all of the books that were written specifically by Robert Jordan, and then the final 3 books were written posthumously after he passed away. And so, like, I will get to them, I need to get to them, I know it, but just, like, those romantic prophecies and the way it's done, the payoff is just not there for me. Then question number 4, I hate this trope, but I loved this book. So, a common trope that we see, especially in young adult, any kind of romantical plots going on, there tends to be this love triangle, and the love triangle feels like it's kind of thrown in there for extra tension or a source of conflict between characters because they couldn't think of something else via the plot to, like, cause drama. Or I don't know why love triangles are so popular for authors to write about. I, like most people, really don't enjoy them. However, in the recent book that just came out, or is just coming out in, like, a week, is The Final Strife by Miss Sarah El Arifi. And in this book, there is a love triangle, but the way that it is done, like, I don't want to give too much away because I don't want to give, like, any kind of spoilers, but it's, like, almost subtle, and it's almost more somebody, like, questioning, and it's almost like this manifestation of their past versus their future, and who they were versus who they want to be. And so just the way that the love triangle is done is fantastic, and it's never this, like, overt, angsty, just for drama's sake. Like, the way that it is done is, like, realistic and makes sense, and it's not this, like, whole piney angsty and, like, oh, all these hot people just want to touch my body. What am I going to do with my life? Like, it's not that. So, it's fantastic. And if you have not yet heard of The Final Strife, I have a whole spoiler-free review of it that I'll link if you want to get more information about that book, because it's fantastic. I love this author, but I didn't like this book. So this one was harder for me, because if I love an author, I tend to, like, I can acknowledge when a book isn't my favorite, or, like, it was like, there was parts of that that were like, but, like, I'm never like, that book was gross. Except for one author who's later on this list. So, contradictions, but so what I went for this one was, and it's more just because I want to talk about the series, TBH, but Age of Swords, book 2 in the Legends of the First Empire series by Mr. Michael J. Sullivan. I've been talking about this a lot. I talked about it in my So You Want to Read More Books About Dragons. I've done a spoiler-free / spoiler-filled gush of Age of Myth, so I'll link that if you want more information about book 1 in this series. But book 2 definitely kind of deviates a little bit, and it was a big, pretty significant downturn for me, because book 1 was 5 stars, book 3 was 5 stars, and book 2 was like 3.5 to 4, somewhere in there. It was, like, good but not great. And so just because I love the other books so much, this one in comparison, it's like, But I do love this author, and I think this is going to become a favorite series of all time. I'm excited to get to the next 3 books in the series ASAP, but I have heard that I basically need to be ready to binge all 3 books, because books 4 and 5 end on massive cliffhangers, and you're just going to want to keep going. And so I am just waiting for a moment in my schedule where I can just binge read all 3 books back to back. But that's my answer. take it or leave it. Then question 6, I previously hated a book by this author, but loved this book. We all know that I have a storied history with Miss Sarah Jessica Janet Janelle Mass. So I really enjoyed Crescent City Book 1, House of Earth and Blood. I hated Crescent City Book 2. We're not going back to that place. Not right now. But, since I really disliked that book, and I buddy read it with my friends Shoshana and Ingrid, they said, oh, give Sarah J. Maas another try. So we have since buddy read the Throne of Glass series. And in that series, there is one book in particular that I really loved. So this is book 5, Empire of Storms. So I can't say too much about it because book 5 in a 7-book series. But most of the things that I don't like about Sarah J. Maas boil down to her romance and her tendency to have like almost the first half of the book be very slow, romance-driven plot points that I am not really here for. And so this book in particular starts off with a bang, ends with a bang. It's fantastic. The romance parts are the only part that kept this book from being a full 5 out of 5 stars for me. So it was 4.75 stars when I read it. And I loved this book. It's friggin' great. If you haven't read Throne of Glass, you should give it a try. It does start in a much younger tone, but we get very serious, very dark, very world-ending type stuff as you move through the series. Okay, question number 7. I love this cover, but I hated this book. So there are very few books that I've hated, and I wouldn't necessarily say, I'm just full of contradictions, but this is the tag to do it in, so don't come at me for it. I don't necessarily love this cover, but I do like it. So this is House of... and by Miss Sarah J. This book, this is one of the few books that I actually like. It gives me a visceral like every time I think about it. Yeah, I don't want to say much more about it. If you want more information, I'll link my full spoiler-filled rant about all the things in this book that drove me up a wall, sideways, backwards, unwillingly, unconsensually, up the wall. Friggin' no. The last question is, I hate this cover, but loved this book. So here, wherever I fit it on the screen, is the US cover for Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. And I think it is hideous. This like blue and yellow and just, But oh my God, Strange the Dreamer is so good. So good. Yes, it's in the YA category, but the way that she writes her prose is beautiful. It's such a whimsical tale about this librarian who dreams of this hidden, lost city and what is happening there, what happened, why the name of this city was magically erased from the minds of everybody in this world and is now known solely as Weep. And his journey to this city with a group of people to figure out what happened to Weep. And it is moving, fantastic. It's just a duology, Strange the Dreamer and Muse of Nightmare, so it's not a huge commitment. So if you have not checked out Strange the Dreamer and you like dark, deep, moving plots, it doesn't get much better than Strange the Dreamer. So you should read it. And you should come back here and thank me for it because you're welcome. But that is it for the Contradictions book tag. If you want to do this tag, you're it. So how about we tag Mr. Theo over at Rekindled Reader? Boom, you tagged. Who else? Let's tag Chris over at a Fictional Escapist. Pa, pa, pa. You're welcome. I hope you do this tag. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you have a fun time. But that's all I have for you guys today. Have you ever read any of these books? Liked any of these books? Agree with the questions that I used them for? Disagree? Let me know down in those comments down below, or just let me know your answers to any of these questions that strike your fancy. And while you're down there, go ahead and click that like button. Subscribe if you have not already. If you want to see more bookish shenanigans like this from moi. Other than that, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye!